In 1959, something unthinkable happened. The Chinese invasion of Tibet didn't just destroy a nation, it nearly wiped out the most advanced spiritual technology ever developed by human beings. As monasteries burned and masters fled for their lives, thousands of years of Kundalini meditation knowledge was scattered to the winds, techniques so powerful they could awaken superhuman abilities in ordinary people. Practices so dangerous they were taught only to the most prepared disciples after decades of training. Most of this knowledge was lost forever, but some survived. Tonight, I'm going to reveal the lost art of Kundalini meditation from Tibetan masters, techniques that were nearly erased from history. You'll discover why Tibetan methods are considered the safest and most powerful approach to awakening, the specific practices that refugee monks preserved in secret, and, most importantly, how these ancient techniques can transform your consciousness in ways that Indian yoga traditions never could. Because here's what most people don't know. Tibetan Buddhism developed the most sophisticated understanding of Kundalini energy on earth. They created methods that could awaken the serpent power without the dangerous side effects that plagued other traditions. They mastered techniques that could generate internal heat, activate psychic abilities, and achieve enlightenment in a single lifetime. And now, for the first time, these closely guarded secrets are being shared with the world. But there's a reason these teachings were kept hidden for so long. There's a reason only the most advanced masters were allowed to learn them. Because when practiced correctly, these techniques don't just change your consciousness. They can literally transform you into a being of extraordinary power and awareness. So if you're ready to discover the most advanced spiritual technology ever created, stay with me, because what I'm about to share was nearly lost forever. To understand what was almost lost, we need to go back to March 1959, when the Dalai Lama fled Tibet in the dead of night, carrying with him not just the hopes of his people, but the most precious spiritual knowledge ever accumulated by human civilization. What most people don't know is that the Dalai Lama's escape wasn't just about political freedom. It was about preserving spiritual knowledge that had taken over 1,000 years to develop. Hidden in the robes of fleeing monks were texts that contained the most advanced Kundalini practices ever created. According to recently declassified CIA documents, the Chinese weren't just destroying monasteries randomly. They were specifically targeting institutions known to house advanced tantric practices. They understood that these weren't just religious buildings. They were repositories of consciousness technology that could threaten any system of control. The monastery of Samye, founded in the 8th century, contained the most complete collection of Kundalini texts in Tibet. As Chinese forces approached, the monks had less than 24 hours to decide what to save. Elder monks made the ultimate sacrifice, and they stayed behind to burn the less important texts, while younger monks escaped with the most precious teachings. Many of those who stayed were never seen again. But what they saved was extraordinary. Complete instruction manuals for practices that could awaken Kundalini energy in ways that were both safer and more powerful than anything developed in India. The monks who escaped didn't just flee to safety, they immediately began the work of preservation. In remote valleys of Nepal and northern India, they established secret schools where the most advanced practices could be taught away from prying eyes. In Dharamshala, the Dalai Lama's residence in exile, a group of senior monks created what they called the Preservation Project, a systematic effort to record and transmit the most important Kundalini practices before the knowledge holders died. But here's what's fascinating. They couldn't teach these practices openly, even in exile. The advanced Kundalini techniques were disguised as basic meditation instructions. What appeared to be simple breathing exercises were actually sophisticated energy activation methods. What looked like basic visualization practices were actually consciousness transformation technologies. I've had the privilege of studying with some of these refugee masters, and what they preserved is nothing short of miraculous. Techniques that can awaken Kundalini energy in months instead of years, methods that can generate internal heat in minutes, practices that can activate psychic abilities with remarkable consistency. But what makes Tibetan Kundalini meditation so different from the Indian traditions that most people know? First, Tibetan masters integrated Kundalini practices with Buddhist philosophy in ways that made them infinitely safer. While Indian traditions often focused purely on energy activation, Tibetan methods emphasized wisdom and compassion as prerequisites. Second, they developed visualization techniques that are far more sophisticated than anything found in Indian yoga. Instead of simple chakra meditation, they created complex deity yoga practices that engage multiple levels of consciousness simultaneously. But most importantly, they developed safety protocols that prevented the spiritual emergencies that plagued other traditions. Every Tibetan Kundalini practice includes built-in stabilization techniques that keep practitioners grounded while their consciousness expands. And here's what's truly remarkable. They understood something about Kundalini that other traditions missed entirely. They discovered that Kundalini energy isn't just one force. It's actually a complex system of interconnected energies that must be awakened in a specific sequence. And the practices they developed to accomplish this are unlike anything you've ever encountered. What I'm about to share has been hidden for over 60 years. These are the actual techniques that Tibetan masters developed to awaken Kundalini energy safely and completely. The foundation of all Tibetan Kundalini practice is Tummo, the generation of inner fire. But this isn't just a breathing exercise. It's a complete technology for awakening the fundamental energy of consciousness. Here's how the traditional practice works. You begin by visualizing a small flame at your navel center, not the base of the spine like in Indian traditions, but at the solar plexus, where your physical and energetic bodies intersect. Then you use a specific breathing pattern. Inhale deeply, filling your lower abdomen. Hold the breath while contracting your pelvic floor muscles. Exhale slowly while visualizing the flame growing brighter and beginning to rise. But here's what makes the Tibetan method unique. You don't just visualize fire. You visualize yourself as fire. In the complete practice, you dissolve your ordinary sense of having a physical body and instead identify completely with the inner fire. You become a being of pure, luminous energy, with no solid form, no fixed boundaries, no separation between inner and outer. This identification technique is what makes Tibetan Tummo so much safer than forced Kundalini awakening. Instead of trying to push energy through a resistant ego structure, you dissolve the ego into the energy itself. The second foundational practice is TSA Lung, working with the winds that move through your energy channels. This is where Tibetan understanding becomes truly sophisticated. Tibetan masters mapped 72,000 energy channels in the human body, but they focused on three main channels: the central channel, Uma, and the two side channels, Roma and Kyangma. These correspond roughly to the Sushumna, Pingala, and Ida nadis of Indian yoga, but the Tibetan understanding is far more detailed. In TSA lung practice, you use specific breathing patterns combined with physical movements to direct energy through these channels in precise sequences. It's like conducting an orchestra of energy flows throughout your body. For example, you might inhale while raising your right arm and visualizing energy flowing up the right channel. Hold the breath while the energies meet at the crown, then exhale while lowering your left arm and directing energy down the left channel. But the real mastery comes when you can direct multiple energy flows simultaneously while maintaining the inner fire visualization and the dissolution of ordinary identity. It's an incredibly sophisticated practice that engages your entire being. But perhaps the most unique aspect of Tibetan Kundalini meditation is the integration with deity yoga, the practice of identifying with enlightened beings. In Tibetan Buddhism, you don't just meditate on emptiness or energy. You actually become a Buddha through visualization and identification. You see yourself as having the body, speech, and mind of an enlightened being. When this is combined with Kundalini awakening, something extraordinary happens. Instead of just experiencing energy rising through your personal energy system, you're experiencing the awakening of Buddha nature itself. For instance, you might visualize yourself as Vajrayogini, a female Buddha associated with the transformation of desire into wisdom. As you practice Tummo, you're not just generating personal inner fire, you're awakening the cosmic fire of enlightened consciousness. This completely changes the nature of the awakening experience. Instead of the ego experiencing spiritual energy, the ego dissolves into enlightened identity. Instead of personal transformation, you're participating in the awakening of universal Buddha nature. It's not about becoming enlightened. It's about recognizing that you already are enlightened and always have been. But here's where Tibetan Kundalini practice becomes truly extraordinary. They connected energy awakening with dream yoga, the practice of maintaining consciousness during sleep. Tibetan masters understood that the same energy that awakens during Kundalini meditation is active during dreams. They developed techniques for maintaining awareness during sleep states and using dream time for advanced spiritual practice. When your Kundalini energy is properly awakened through Tummo and TSA lung practice, it naturally begins to remain active during sleep. You start having lucid dreams spontaneously, and eventually, you can maintain continuous awareness through sleeping, dreaming, and waking states. The most advanced practitioners can actually continue their Kundalini meditation while asleep. They maintain the inner fire visualization, the deity yoga identification, and the energy channel work throughout the night. Sleep becomes another opportunity for spiritual development rather than unconscious downtime. This means that advanced Tibetan practitioners are essentially meditating 24 hours a day. They're continuously working with Kundalini energy whether awake or asleep. It's a level of practice integration that other traditions never achieved. But even these practices are just the foundation. The most advanced Tibetan Kundalini techniques go far beyond anything I've described so far. What I'm about to reveal represents the pinnacle of human spiritual achievement. These are the most advanced Kundalini techniques ever developed, practices that can literally prepare you for death and rebirth. The 6 yogas of Naropa represent the most complete system of Kundalini awakening ever created. These practices were developed by the great master Naropa in the 11th century and have been transmitted in unbroken lineage ever since. The 6 practices are Tummo, inner fire, illusory body, dream yoga, clear light, intermediate state, and consciousness transference. Each one builds on the previous practices and takes Kundalini awakening to deeper levels. But here's what most people don't know. Several of these practices involve working with sexual energy in ways that would shock most spiritual seekers. In traditional Tibetan practice, sexual energy is understood as the most powerful force for spiritual transformation. Advanced practitioners learn to transform sexual desire into spiritual bliss through specific meditation techniques. This isn't about physical sexual practices. It's about recognizing that the same energy that creates physical pleasure can create spiritual ecstasy when properly directed. The Tibetan masters developed incredibly sophisticated methods for this transformation. This is one of the main reasons these teachings were kept so secret. The practices involve working with forces that could easily be misunderstood or misused. Only students who had demonstrated complete ethical purity and emotional stability were taught these methods. Perhaps the most extraordinary of all Tibetan Kundalini practices is Phowa, the ability to transfer consciousness at will. This is literally the practice of dying before death. In Phowa practice, you learn to eject your consciousness from your body through the crown chakra and transfer it to a pure realm or into another body. It's the ultimate expression of Kundalini mastery, complete control over the life force itself. The practice begins with intensive Tummo meditation to generate enough inner fire to power the consciousness transference. Then you use specific visualizations and mantras to literally shoot your consciousness out of your body like an arrow from a bow. But here's why this practice is considered the most dangerous of all spiritual techniques. If you successfully transfer your consciousness out of your body but don't know how to get back, you die permanently. There are documented cases of practitioners who attempted Phowa without proper preparation and never returned to their bodies. This is why Phowa is only taught by the most qualified masters to the most advanced students. It requires not just technical skill, but complete fearlessness in the face of death itself. But when mastered, Phowa gives you complete freedom from the fear of death. You know with absolute certainty that consciousness is not dependent on the physical body. You can literally practice dying and returning to life. The final level of Tibetan Kundalini practice is Mahamudra, the great seal that integrates all previous practices into a state of effortless enlightenment. Mahamudra is the practice of maintaining awakened awareness in all activities. Whether you're meditating, working, eating, or sleeping, you remain in the same state of enlightened consciousness. When Mahamudra is combined with fully awakened Kundalini energy, you achieve what Tibetan masters call the rainbow body, a state where your physical form becomes completely transparent to enlightened consciousness. There are documented cases of Tibetan masters who achieved a rainbow body at death. Their physical bodies literally dissolved into light, leaving behind only hair and fingernails. This represents the ultimate integration of Kundalini energy with enlightened consciousness. In 1998, a Tibetan master named Khenpo Achos achieved a rainbow body in front of multiple witnesses. Over the course of 7 days, his body gradually became transparent and then disappeared completely. This wasn't mythology. It was witnessed and documented by dozens of people. Western scientists are now studying this phenomenon, trying to understand how consciousness can affect matter so dramatically. But Tibetan masters have understood this for centuries. When Kundalini energy is fully integrated with enlightened awareness, the boundaries between mind and matter dissolve. But you don't need to achieve rainbow body to benefit from Mahamudra practice. Even beginning levels of this integration allow you to maintain spiritual awareness throughout daily life. Your job, your relationships, your ordinary activities all become opportunities for enlightenment. The key to Mahamudra is complete non-attachment to spiritual experiences. You don't grasp at blissful states or try to avoid difficult emotions. You remain equally present with whatever arises, knowing that all experiences are expressions of enlightened consciousness. But how do you actually practice these techniques in the modern world? How do you adapt methods that were designed for monastery life to contemporary circumstances? The beauty of Tibetan Kundalini methods is that they can be adapted for modern life without losing their essential power. But this adaptation requires wisdom and careful guidance. The first principle of adaptation is understanding that the essence of these practices lies not in their external form, but in their internal dynamics. For instance, you don't need to spend 6 hours a day in formal meditation to practice Tummo. You can generate inner fire during your morning commute, while walking in nature, or even during work breaks. The key is maintaining the visualization and breathing awareness. Similarly, TSA lung energy work can be integrated into modern exercise routines. Yoga, Tai Chi, or even simple stretching can become opportunities to direct energy through your channels when you apply Tibetan awareness techniques. Deity yoga might seem foreign to Western practitioners, but it's essentially advanced positive visualization. Instead of seeing yourself as stressed, limited, or ordinary, you maintain the identity of being wise, compassionate, and enlightened. But here's what's crucial. These adaptations must maintain the safety protocols that make Tibetan methods so effective. While Tibetan Kundalini methods are generally safer than other approaches, they still require careful attention to warning signs. If you experience excessive heat that doesn't respond to cooling techniques, if you start having uncontrollable out-of-body experiences, or if you begin to lose touch with ordinary reality for extended periods, you need to slow down your practice immediately. With deity yoga, watch for spiritual pride or feeling superior to others because of your practice. This indicates that ego is co-opting the enlightened identity rather than dissolving into it. In dream yoga practice, be careful not to become so focused on dream states that you neglect waking life responsibilities. The goal is integration, not escape. Most importantly, These practices should ideally be learned from qualified teachers who can provide personalized guidance and safety oversight. Finding qualified instruction in Tibetan Kundalini methods can be challenging, but there are authentic lineage holders teaching in the West. Look for teachers who can trace their training back to recognized Tibetan masters, who emphasize safety and gradual development, and who integrate ethical training with energy practices. Avoid teachers who promise rapid results, who charge excessive fees for secret teachings, or who claim to be reincarnated masters without proper recognition from traditional authorities. While books and online resources can provide valuable information, the most advanced Tibetan practices require personal transmission from qualified teachers. The energy transmission aspect cannot be replicated through media. Seek out communities of serious practitioners who are studying these methods with qualified guidance. The support of fellow practitioners is invaluable for maintaining safe and consistent practice. The techniques I've shared today represent just the beginning of what Tibetan masters preserved. But even these foundational practices can transform your spiritual development in profound ways. So here we are, at the end of our journey into the lost art of Kundalini meditation from Tibetan masters. You now understand what was nearly lost forever in 1959, and what dedicated masters have preserved against all odds. You've discovered why Tibetan methods are considered the most advanced and safest approach to Kundalini awakening. You've learned about Tummo inner fire practice, TSA lung energy work, Deity yoga integration, and dream yoga connection. You've seen how these practices can be adapted for modern life while maintaining their essential power. But most importantly, you've witnessed how precious spiritual knowledge can be preserved even in the face of cultural destruction. The refugee monks who carried these teachings into exile didn't just save techniques, they saved humanity's most advanced understanding of consciousness transformation. And now that knowledge has been shared with you, with that sharing comes responsibility to practice with wisdom, to respect the lineage that preserved these teachings, and to help ensure they're transmitted safely to future generations. You're now part of a lineage that stretches back over 1,000 years to the great masters of Tibet. You carry within you the same potential for awakening that they cultivated in the high mountains of the Himalayas. If this video has opened your eyes to the extraordinary wisdom that was nearly lost, let me know in the comments. Share your own experiences with Tibetan practices, ask questions about the techniques, and help preserve this knowledge by sharing it with others who are ready to receive it. And if you want to continue learning these preserved teachings that represent the pinnacle of human spiritual achievement, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because what I'm sharing isn't just information, it's a living transmission of enlightened consciousness. The masters who preserved these teachings sacrificed everything so that future generations could access the most advanced spiritual technology ever created. They believed that consciousness transformation was humanity's greatest hope. Their sacrifice was not in vain. The teachings survived, the lineage continues, and now, through you, their wisdom can touch the world once again. May all beings benefit from the profound compassion and wisdom of the Tibetan masters. May their teachings bring awakening to all who are ready to receive them. And may the light of consciousness that they preserved continue to shine for generations to come.